everybody, this is Amanda Cooper with Cola Daily, and in the studio with me today we have South Carolina. I call him South Carolina's royalty because he's a part of a crew of kings that have just ruled this whole nation with your music and with their iconic sound. In the studio today I have none other than Jim Soni Sonefeld from Hootie and the Blowfish. I feel like a little groupie today.
Well, you know what? It's been a while since we had groupies. I don't know what even they're called now, but thank you.
Oh man, I'm so happy that you have some time to sit here and talk to us here at Cola Daily. I know you're very busy, and I'm excited because you have another new book out.
Yeah, I've been
Swimming with the Blowfish.
I've been swimming with the Blowfish for 3 decades now, and eventually I wanted to write about the journey, how I found my guys, and what happened in life after we shot up the charts, and then what happens afterwards and behind the scenes. I think that's an intriguing story not a lot of people see.
So basically you're spilling the tea.
A little bit of tea, not too much. Don't worry, guys. Not spilling all the tea.
Well, I love it. You know, when people think of Hootie and the Blowfish, I mean, there's just like this image of these young, ambitious, just wonderfully talented young men out of, you know, the University of South Carolina. And you just come into this scene. I'm sure this book just shares so many of the rise. I noticed here in one of the reviews it says it talks about the band's rise, fall, and rebirth, as well as your path from addiction to recovery in it says a more fruitful life. So it's almost like the prodigal son comes home, in a sense, that type of story.
I had to leave, unfortunately, to get to come home. But yeah, it's about all those journeys, not only mine, but some of the bands too. You know, we started at the end of college, getting degrees and wondering what our path would be. And we just worked hard. We didn't know how to write songs formally, but we knew how to work. We had a gifted singer in Darius Rucker, and we were all we wanted to persevere. And then we got a little lucky, which I call where preparation meets opportunity. Yeah. David Letterman decided to put us on his show in September of '94, and that changed our trajectory. But like life, it's about adapting to change. We had great things happening, but then that stopped happening. And then life changes again and again. And finally we arrive in the present.
Well, when we talk about this book, I think, you know, right now you're at an age where you're able to share that. What made you say, you know what, I need to get this out?
It took me about 10 to 12 years of having a big turn and change in my life to settle into what that meant to my whole life. And it happened when I was a 40-year-old guy, and I had to acknowledge my powerlessness over drugs and alcohol. And it was a hard turn for me to make. I thought it was maybe the end of something great, but it was the beginning of something even greater. And I spent about 10 years in that journey before I wanted to write about it formally. And at that time, I also realized the Hootie story hadn't really been written. And there were so many fun details and just things from the past that no one knows about that I thought they would find interesting. So I sort of combined my recovery journey and the Hootie journey, and it ends up with the luck of a little timing taking place and landing in 2019, where we've reunited for our first tour in a decade, which was highly successful and way more fun than we thought it would be. And it hits right before COVID as well. So it's sort of a snug story with a red bow on top that didn't have to mess with COVID. Because, right, who wants to keep talking about that?
Well, you know, one thing that I love is you being vulnerable and brave enough to share that story. How did your band members take that when you say, this is what I'm going to write about, these are the things that I'm going to share?
Yeah, they supported me, and they have supported me through this recovery journey from the beginning. Nothing worse than having a friend around you who's sick and who's struggling, and they saw that in me. So when I took that turn, they supported it every way they could. And going forward, as life changes and continues to change, and then Darius becomes a country star, and people end up divorced and remarried, it's a lot. But we've always supported each other. We've always tried to remain best of friends, even as life goes forward, and you change geographically and spiritually and musically. So it's been a wonderful story of how to stay friends.
So for someone who, huge Hootie and the Blowfish fan and just admire the group and their journey so much, what can some of the things that you've shared in this book, and not to give it all away, you got to buy the book, but, what was the one thing that you really wanted to get across to your readers?
I think that we were a combination of hardworking and lucky, and we got to be part of the music business. And that music business can sometimes, chew you up and spit you out, and it did for us a couple times. I want people to see what's behind the curtain besides just four guys on stage looking like they're having a good time. And I think that's valuable to give everyone a perspective about sort of how music works, how you create song, how you get in a business, that it really is a business.
Yeah.
And so I wanted them to see, I thought that was valuable, and I'd spent a lot of time thinking about it. I also spent a lot of time on the internet trying to remember
what happened.
We were in 1996, 98, because it's a lot. And I journaled and kept extensive calendars that documented where we were. I had a journal from the recording of our big record, Cracked Review, which I could go back to and say, oh, I didn't remember that. So together, I just want people to see some things they had never thought about before.
And when we talk about your journey, you mentioned several times that you were lucky, and how this book really focuses on, a part of it focuses on you in your recovery from addiction. One thing that I know about addiction is it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care who you are, where you're from, how much money you have or don't have. It just really can cripple your life. Not to give too much away, but what is the biggest advice that you have to those that are struggling right now with addiction? I mean,
it's just what you said. It doesn't discriminate. So don't ever think that it couldn't be happening to you, because it could happen to you. It happens to people of all sorts, of all different parts of life. But really, the thing that helped me the most is to realize there is an answer. There's an answer for all of our addictions or illnesses or bad thinking, if you will. I learned that besides my inability to control my drinking, I also had some very bad thinking underneath that was causing most of my problems.
Right.
And there's answers. There's 800 numbers, there's 12-step groups of all sorts, and that's what I want to tell people a lot about, is that don't feel like you need to isolate. Go get help, but you need to ask somebody often. They don't always come knocking at your door.
Wow, Jim, it's amazing that you're being vulnerable and telling this story. One thing that I love about Hootie and the Blowfish, for me, of course, the music is iconic, but the fact that you guys are from the University of South Carolina.
Right.
During this conversation with me today, you've mentioned luck twice. Do you really think you were lucky or destined?
Ooh, destined is a big word there. Thanks for throwing that in. There were so many times, and I mentioned in the book, where if certain little things did not happen the way they did, there wouldn't maybe be a Hootie and the Blowfish, or there wouldn't be certain members in the band. There were all these turns that, like, oh my gosh, if I wasn't standing there when that happened, it ain't happening. So, and destiny maybe it was meant to be. Certainly Hootie wouldn't have looked like they did had I not got the opportunity to join in '89 when the old drummer was leaving. But I'm not sure. Luck, coincidence, that's up to anyone to define. I always thought luck for me is a little bit of prep and a little bit of good timing. So somewhere in there, the synergy comes together and you get to do a good thing. Here's luck. David Letterman, the biggest late night star in 1994, is driving home from work, and he hears the song Hold My Hand on the radio. Luck, I don't know, destiny, he likes it, he calls his booker, and they say, get me that band. We're at home just waiting and begging and pleading for a call like that. Of course, we'll drop anything, but there's some curious coincidences at least.
Yeah, I'm going to say it was more than luck. I think because you guys transformed the sound of music for a lot of people. You cross so many different musical barriers and borders when it comes to your audience base.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it happened, because we wouldn't have Swimming with the Blowfish.
And if we hadn't become Gamecocks, we certainly wouldn't have have this either.
Exactly.
The fact that two of us came from Maryland, I came from
Michigan.
Northern Illinois and Michigan, and Darius was from Charleston.
That's a lot of different regions to combine into one for that iconic sound. One thing I want to bring up is here in Columbia, you're doing a reading at All Good Reads, correct?
All Good Books.
All Good Books. Yeah, they just opened up in 5 Points. Tell us about. I know coming up, you're having your last reading of this, correct?
Yeah, it's been sort of a residency, and we're so thrilled as locals to have a neighborhood bookstore, right? A place where you can go and look through the aisles and sit down and have a cup of coffee. They serve beer and wine as well. They've got a back room that holds about 50 people that they hold events for. I thought they were new this year, and what better way to get through the summer doldrums in Columbia, where we don't have the blessings of a mountain or a beach or a breeze, than hanging out in an air-conditioned bookstore. We did it in June, July, and this is our last one coming up on Thursday the 17th. 6:30, come in, it's free, padded chairs, camaraderie. I'll tell some stories from the book, I'll sing some songs, I'll answer some questions, sign your book if you want one.
I love it, I absolutely love it, and that's this Thursday, August 17th.
That's right.
Are they going to extend your residency? Because I think people might want a little bit more of you.
Well, I'd be willing to have that conversation. It's been a blast. The crowd has grown each event, and we expect a big crowd there on Thursday too, but it's a great place. It's an easy place to hang out too, right?
Exactly. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I might just pop in myself.
Come on.
Again, everybody, this is Jim, Soni, Sonefeld from Hootie and the Blowfish. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Amanda.